Hi YouTubers, it's Ian with Photocycling, and I'm here to talk about some Magic the Gathering today. So it's another black-blue deck. It's a lot different from my previous black-blue deck, the Missive Stagnation deck that I did the other day. So this one's more on it's also on the control side, but it's more of dissecting your opponent's deck. So I play casual, therefore this deck is very casual. It's not type 2, it's not competitive for tournament play at all. So let's get started, and you let me know what you think at the end of the video. This deck is actually 60 cards. It just looks really big because I double sleeved them. And I'll explain to you why I double sleeved them when we get to that part. Okay? Alright, let me separate the lands and the main deck cards, and then we'll go from there. So, like I mentioned, it's black and blue, so we'll go with the black cards first, and then we'll go through with the blue cards. Alright, so the first black card is Soren Markov. I have one of those in the deck. 4 Grave Titans. I run 4 of those. I run 1 Black Sun's Zenith. 2 Consume the Meek. I really apologize for the glare here. We'll put all the creatures on one side. 3 Doomblades. 3 Go for the Throat. 2 Memoroside. 2 Extirpates. 4 Surgical Extraction. And that finishes out the black. As far as the blue, I run 4 Preordains. 2 Consecrated Sphinx. 4 Mana Leaks. And 4 Jace the Mind Sculptor. That finishes out the blue. I have 1 artifact in the deck, and that is 1 Runechanter's Pike. Alright, that finishes out the cards of the main deck. And then now we're going to talk about the lands. I run 5 islands, 4 swamps, 4 Creeping Tar Pit, 4 Drowned Catacomb, 4 Darkslake Shores, 1 Nephalia Drownyard, 1 Inkmoth Nexus. That finishes out the land and the rest of the decks. So the Inkmoth Nexus, yeah, so now I'm going to talk about why I run this deck, these cards the way they do, that I do in this deck. Inkmoth is when I am completely out of creatures, I don't have any more Grave Titans, I don't have any more Consecrated Sphinx, I have no other way of killing them, and I use this, give them 10 poison counters, if I possibly can, with Runechanter's Pike, and hopefully that works for the best, and that's one win con. So that's the first win con. Second win con is Nephalia Drownyard. If somehow I pop the ultimate ability on Jace right here, and I get them to switch their hands, and their hands happen to, I mean, the most they can have is 7 in their hand, and oftentimes it might be less than 7 at late game, so they'll be down to 5 cards or so. Nephalia Drownyard will hopefully mill their deck. That's why I run this in here. I don't get the chance to use his ultimate much unless the board is really under my control. Then I can start using him for that ability. But that's what it's in here. It's just for that case, just for something to do, another win con. That's really what the Nephalia Drawn Yard's for. The rest of the lands are pretty self-explanatory. I have 12 dual lands, per se. They're not true dual lands, but they produce either black or blue mana, which is wonderful. So I use the Creeping Tar Pits because it has a 3/2 block ability along with the blue or black mana ability, which is fantastic. So in this deck, again, another win con. If I need some unblockable damage going in, that helps me a lot. So that's why I run him in the deck. And the rest is just basic mana, so pretty standard. And that's why I run the lands that I do. Okay? The Rune Chanter spec you've already seen. He works with Inkmoth Nexus, or he works with Grave Titan, and Death Touch. So you've already seen why I have this just one in here. It's not my main win con, but it is a win con. Alright, now to the meat and potatoes of this deck. This deck, I made this around this card right here. It is to dissect the entire opponent's deck. So basically, early in the game, if you're playing against a deck where there's lots of creatures and it's an aggressive deck, a creature decks, beginning of the game, if you're playing against a deck that has key creatures in your opponent's deck, you can start either Doomblade on the creature or go for the throat. And once you get one creature, all you need is one creature in the graveyard, and you can target with Surgical Extraction at no cost. And again, playing this deck, you're going to be losing a lot of life pretty quick. But it's all about the control. Once you play this first or second turn, you now have a better idea of what kind of deck your opponent's playing. And this will allow you to tailor all of your plays afterwards to their deck. And figuring out what you need to save your spells for, or what cards you can let by and not have to worry about destroying or countering. All that stuff, after you play one Surgical Extraction, you should know what the deck is, what your opponent's deck is all about. And I have 4 of those Surgical Extractions, along with 2 extirpates. So there's a total of 6 dissecting cards in the deck. And that will help you dissect their decks, because if they have 4 copies, all you need is 1 copy in the graveyard with one of these early game creature destroyers, and you should be all set by dissecting their deck, and you pretty much have somewhat of a control at that point. So that's what these 2 combination cards are for. Consume the Meek is mid-game control. This is mid-game board control. If their deck, your opponent's deck are so aggressive that you cannot maintain control of their creatures, and you're always constantly going up against 3 to 5 creatures at a time, and they're just swinging and smacking all the time. Consume the Meek is really good because most aggressive decks will run creatures with converted mana 3 or less, and therefore this really helps to clear the board and try to get them under control. And again, once you get that under control, you have more Surgical Extractions in your hand. Start popping some of these and get rid of some of those fast creatures, so they can, you can minimize your damage a little bit. The Morosite is also a mid-game dissecting card, just like the Surgical Extraction. This is for something like, if there are cards in your opponent's deck that are not creature-based and they are destroying you and just giving you havoc, after you've Surgical Extraction that first turn, you now have an idea of what you can target, so you can Memoricide into a permanent or a spell in your opponent's deck that you can't get rid of with Consume the Meek or Go for the Throat or things of such nature. So this actually helps get rid of spells without having to counter them and without having to have it in play or in graveyard. So that's what the Memoricide is, for mid-game dissection. My Grave Titans in here are useful for many things. It can be used as a win con along with Sorin. So if I play this, if I have all the creatures under control and my opponents can't do anything, I can throw this down and have 10 damage on the board, and if opponents doesn't do anything, like I said, you can throw the Sorin Markov down, bring their life down to 10, and swing for 10, and pretty much that's game. So that's a win con. He's also helpful if there are little creatures that are popping out and you can't kill them fast enough. you can pick it off, and when you pick off the little creatures, you gain 2 life. If there are no creatures, because you have the board so much control now, you can pick off your opponent's life and gain 3 life in the process from all those surgical extractions that you played. So he's helpful, and I mean, you really don't need him, but that's why you only need to run 1 in the deck, and he's really helpful as a win con support to Grave Titan and getting some life back and just being an annoyance pretty much. So that's why I run the Sorin Markov. The Grave Titan's another use for him besides the win con is that he is awesome for defense. So some late game, and if you get rid of all these creatures, and by this time you're at 4 or 6 or 4 life, and you pop him down, and it buys you some time. He puts 2 more creatures in play. He's a 6/6, and he's got Death Touch, so opponents attacking you is going to be a little bit leery, because now they might be losing creatures, and you still have a 6/6 that's going to produce more zombies when it attacks. So he's very good for defense. So that's another use for him besides the win con. The Black Sun Zenith is self-explanatory. It's complete board wipe. But it's useful because it keeps shuffling back into your deck, and you can continuously use it. So if there's annoying little 1/1s at the beginning of the game, and there's like 10 of them coming out in hordes, you can certainly pop this and shuffle it back in and try to redeem control again. So that's why this is in here. And that's pretty much the black, how that works. So the black is for dissection and creature control. The blue is, I'll go over Jace in a minute. The mana leak is early spell control to try and make sure that if they're casting something and you don't want it in play and you don't have any black cards to destroy any particular creature yet, you counter it, and then you can surgical extraction. You know, whether it's a spell that you don't want them to play again, a spell that puts creatures into play and you can't control that, counter the spell, and then try and surgical extract it so they won't be able to play it again. Preordain is card advantage. Self-explanatory. I mean, run 4. And then the Consecrated Sphinx is the same thing. It's card advantage and with defense. It's a 4/6 flying for 6 mana, and it helps you draw every time a player draws a card. So it's card advantage plus a little bit of defense. So that's why I run 2 in there. And last but not least is the Jace the Mind Sculptor. He's just all around good, and you already know this. He has many win cons. He can be the win con with his ultimate ability. He can be a win con by just controlling the deck itself controlling your opponent's deck throughout the game with this top ability and making you decide what your opponent can draw. And that is in itself powerful as it is. Second ability is Brainstorm. Again, card advantage, figuring out what cards you want in your hand, what cards you don't want, and pretty much shuffling, playing around with the top of your deck. The third ability is anytime a giant 15/15 comes out and you can't handle it because he's got some kind of crazy ability on it, you can certainly try and bounce it back if it doesn't have Pro Blue, obviously. Bounce it back and buy yourself some more time. So if someone spent all this mana, all this time to save mana and plays it, he can be an annoyance. Just put him down for 4 mana, return the creature, and you buy yourself some more time. Another thing is he's also a threat on the board, whether he's got 3 loyalties or 1 loyalty, he's always a threat. So if someone's coming at you at 5 damage every turn, pop him down, your opponent will start being worried. They're like, crap, there's a Jace Mind Sculptor on the board, I need to do something about it. And they may divert the 5 damage to him to try and get rid of him instead. That's 5 damage diverted away from you, so you live another turn. So he's got many uses. So I've been using him mostly for the top ability to control. Occasionally I'll use this this third ability to bounce a creature back to buy myself some more time. And most importantly, I've used the ultimate a few times because I have such board control between these cards up here that I'm just controlling what my opponents are drawing, and then I use the ultimate, and then I use an Family Drawing Yard and just deck them. So that's my deck. I call it Surgical Jace because he pretty much owns the deck. He rules the deck with the help of Surgical Extraction and all those black creature control cards. This deck is so much fun to play. It's not very fun in multiplayer because you can't Surgical Extraction all your opponent's deck. So I've only played, I don't think I've tried it multiplayer at all. But it's very fun in one-on-one. It's such a blast to play with. I have never played against it, so I don't know. I'm pretty sure it would be a nightmare to play against it. Yeah, so that's my Jace the Mind Sculptor deck with Surgical Extraction. Any questions, leave a comment, let me know if there's any tweaks I should do. I'm happy that you are watching this video, and I'll see you next time.